Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. Alright, just listen up. The Guinness World Records Award for the deepest human invasion into the Earth's crust goes to the Kola Superdeep Borehole. Ooh. Its depth is 7.4 miles. You can find it in the icy part of Russia where the winter temperature of minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit is a common thing. Well, that's chilling. Local scientists started to dig it in the 1970s. The grand plan was to reach a depth of 9.3 miles. It was a purely scientific project to study the Earth's crust and maybe get to the hot mantle. Well, when it's so cold outside, it kind of makes sense. Up to the depth of 4.3 miles, the drill easily coped with granite rock. Then, denser layers came and broke the drill. The scientists had to change the drilling pattern. In the end, it resembled a tree with many branches. The deeper it went, the hotter it became. The temperature went up to 350 degrees. The equipment was constantly out of order and work was stopped completely in 1992. If you see this legendary place with your own eyes, you'd hardly realize there's an abyss right beneath your feet. The borehole looks like a rather small and unambitious hole in the ground. The place is now abandoned, overgrown with moss and rust. It has its fair share of myths surrounding it too. One of them says people hear strange sounds like moans and screams from the depths. In reality, of course, none of this is true. At the time, many countries were engaged in the study of the Earth's crust. For example, Germany. They duly noted the experience of the Kola borehole and made a super tech drill that could withstand extreme temperatures. A location was chosen in Bavaria at the junction of two tectonic plates. In the past, they were the shores of an ancient ocean. In the early 90s, a group of researchers began drilling a well there. But already at a depth of 4 miles, the Earth fought back. It deflected the drill from the vertical, and then the temperature made a surprise spike to 520 degrees. All these problems forced scientists to stop at a depth of 5.6 miles. In 1977, a company in Austria started drilling a well at a site with plentiful resources, or so they thought. They did find large gas reserves, but there was an unexpected problem. As the drill entered the chamber, the well collapsed. They tried again and made a new, even bigger borehole that went as deep as 5.3 miles. But ironically, they weren't able to drill into the gas chamber again. In Sweden, expectations from drilling weren't met either. At the site of a huge crater 30 miles in diameter, they started the search for gas and oil. It's the largest crater in Europe, which must have appeared because of a meteorite. The well went deep, but unfortunately, nothing of interest was found. At 4 miles down, the drilling stopped. One of the deepest oil wells in the world is Bertha Rogers in Oklahoma. Its depth is almost 6 miles. In 1974, the Lone Star Company achieved such a stunning result in just over 500 days. For 5 years, it was the deepest borehole in the world, until the Kola Superdeep was drilled. Bertha Rogers could probably have gone even deeper, but the drill suddenly struck a molten sulfur deposit. It grew solid around the drill string, breaking the rig. If you can't get to the Earth's mantle from the ground, do it from the water. Project Mohole was just about that. It got its name from moho, the threshold between crust and mantle, and, well, a hole. You know, moho. Well, anyway, the project was launched in the 1960s and was overseen by the U.S. National Science Foundation. The crust on the ocean floor is thinner than on land, and the mantle is closer. Scientists had hoped that a 3-mile deep underwater borehole would bring them there. They chose a location in the Pacific Ocean, where the bottom was at a depth of about 2 miles. There were 2 phases planned for the project, and the first was a success. A total of 5 wells were drilled, each not exceeding 600 feet in depth. Unfortunately, the second phase never happened. Too many problems were involved. So, apparently, there ain't no moho, holes. Today, underwater wells are commonplace. Their main purpose is extraction of oil and gas. The EVA 4000 American drilling platform is located in the Gulf of Mexico. This huge structure rises above the water at a height of a 20-story building. The platform moves around looking for oil at depths of over 6,000 feet. And when it finds a good spot, it's capable of drilling up to 6 miles into the seabed. Now, let's move to Africa. Here at the very south of the continent, there's a huge quarry, the Kimberley Diamond Mine. Now, it's easy to drill through the ground when you have the best equipment. But this hole was literally dug by hand. About 50,000 workers dug it tirelessly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries using ordinary shovels. And no, they hardly wanted to get to the opposite side of the earth. They were attracted by the enchanting brilliance of diamonds. One of the most famous precious stones, Tiffany, weighing 128.5 carats, was found in the Kimberley mine. The depth of the hole reached 790 feet. Just imagine how difficult it was to return from work. It was like climbing 66 floors on foot. When the work stopped, the bottom of the pit was partially filled with soil, and then water flooded the place. Today, it's a popular sight among tourists, and surely, each of them secretly hopes to find a diamond there. With the industrial boom, oil became even more popular than diamonds, and the oil wells around the world are getting deeper. For example, in 2008, Qatar drilled the longest oil well at that time, El Shaheen. It was 7.6 miles long, and it only took them a little over a month. The vertical part of the shaft reaches 6.7 miles. Stretched up instead of down, the shaft would reach the height of commercial airplane flights. The record was broken in 2012 by the Z44 Shavo oil well. When they measured its length, the new hole beat the one in Qatar by about 300 feet. Just for a clearer picture, either of these two oil wells would fit almost 15 Burj Khalifas or 40 Eiffel Towers. Moving on to Canada and high up into the sky to look at it from space. See those two huge holes? If you don't know, those are diamond mining sites. You might think that an alien invasion happened while you slept right through. This enormous place is on the island of Lac de Gras, not far from the Arctic Circle. This is a whole city with industrial and administrative buildings, a boiler house, living quarters for workers, and even an airstrip. In 2018, the largest diamond in North America was found here. It weighed 552 carats. Apart from diamonds and oil, the bowels of the earth have a lot of other useful stuff. One example is copper. Let's go to Utah and see the giant Bingham Canyon mine. Copper has been mined here for over a century. The width of this quarry reaches 2.5 miles, and it goes half a mile down. Just imagine how breathtaking a paragliding flight would be over this powerful structure. But the greatest treasure of the planet is, of course, fresh water. And to get to it, people would dig as deep as they have to. The deepest water well in the world is found in Great Britain. It was dug by hand in the 19th century. People just had to keep on digging because they couldn't get to water, and as a result, they reached almost 1,300 feet. When the water finally gushed from under the ground, the workers barely managed to escape from the well. Many of us spend a huge part of our life under the ground. Yeah, I mean the subway. The deepest underground station in the world is in Kyiv, Ukraine. It takes over 5 minutes for the escalator to lower you to the platform. After all, you're traveling nearly 350 feet down. Sometimes nature decides to dig something deep on its own. Most likely, the Mariana Trench is the deepest point in the ocean.
Oh no.
shouting?
Huh? You can speak? No! No, no, no!
Don't even try to escape.
Ah!
Wow. Okay, I got it. Jeez, no need to swing your fists here. These savages can't even eat in peace.
It's winter, 1980. We're in the small town of Lengby. 19-year-old Jean Hilliard is driving home after meeting with a friend. She takes a shortcut and turns into an icy, slippery road. In the dark, she loses control of the rear-wheel drive car. The vehicle crashes into a ditch. Emergency lights, snowfall, night, and a hard frost. Jean gets out of the vehicle. She's wearing only a light winter coat, mittens, and cowboy boots. The air temperature is much lower than in a freezer. Jean is sure that her friend lives nearby, so she goes that way. She climbs a high hill and realizes she's taken the wrong route. It seems she's gotten lost. The girl wanders a couple more miles and notices her other friend's house in the distance. Freezing, she walks there. Then everything turns black. Jean loses consciousness. The next morning, rancher Wally Nelson wakes up in a great mood. It's the holiday season. There's a winter fairy tale outside the window. He leaves his house and notices the body of Jean Hilliard lying just a few feet from his porch. Wally approaches the girl, shakes her, and is horrified. Her body is stiff and cold like frozen wood. Her eyes are open and don't move. Her hair is frozen. She just doesn't look alive. But Wally sees that she's still breathing. Jean has managed to survive. Wally wants to put her in his car to bring her to the doctor, but the girl's body doesn't bend and can't fit into the auto. It feels like a statue. He takes a bigger car and rushes to the hospital as fast as possible. The doctors take Jean, but they don't think she has any chance to make it. Her hand is so hard and frozen that no needle can penetrate it. A low temperature, glassy eyes, and muscles as hard as stone are all the results of emergency mode. Her body has directed all the blood to the vital organs to ensure their functioning. That's why other parts of her body look so lifeless, and her skin and muscles don't react to anything. The doctors decide to put heating pads on the girl to warm her up. Her family hopes for her recovery, but right now, all they can do is just wait. Frostbite is so dangerous because all that frozen liquid begins to expand. Fill a small bottle with water and put it in the freezer for a few hours. Then take it out, and you'll see that the bottle seems to have expanded or even cracked because of the increased volume of the liquid. The same thing happens inside our bodies. We consist of almost 70% water. When it freezes, its particles turn into ice crystals and tear cell membranes. Ice fragments can stretch and destroy tissue. This is called frostbite. Also, our body can slow down all internal processes in extreme cold conditions to save strength and energy. The heart makes fewer beats, and the lungs stop consuming lots of oxygen. Metabolism slows down. It happened with Jean, and perhaps it is what saved her life that day. She was lying in the snow in severe frost for about 6 hours. But why didn't the ice particles start destroying her cell membranes? How did her body withstand such damage and manage to survive? Back at the hospital, doctors are happy to watch Jean get better. Warm blood spreads through the frozen vessels and brings her body back to life. Surprisingly, ice crystals haven't damaged her muscles and skin. A few hours later, the girl regains consciousness. By noon, she starts talking. Jean doesn't know what happened. She remembers walking to her friend's house and then waking up in the hospital. What worries her most right now is that her father's car is somewhere in a ditch. As it turns out, the girl fell down and crawled on all fours to Wally Nelson's house. She doesn't remember it, but apparently her brain activated the survival instinct that night. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to crawl the last few feet. Jean passed out at the door and stayed there for 6 hours. Doctors examine the girl and understand that she's completely healthy. Soon, she's discharged from the hospital. This case isn't unique. One professor of emergency medicine, David Plummer, said he'd seen about 12 similar cases over the past 10 years when patients had survived severe frostbite. Jean returns home and finds out that she has become famous. People write about her in newspapers, want to interview her, and film documentary shows. Her case has attracted the attention of many doctors around the world, but no one has been able to find out exactly how she managed to survive. In the case of humans, such recoveries seem like an absolute miracle. But many creatures of the natural world can adapt their bodies to extreme conditions. One of them is the tree frog. These animals live mainly in temperate and tropical parts of Eurasia. Sometimes they have to contend with cold weather. Their body injects glucose into the bloodstream when they feel they're freezing, and the content of their cells turns into syrup. Sugar lowers the freezing point of water. So, tree frogs have adapted to such conditions. The water outside their cells can freeze. Their bodies can get as hard as ice cubes, but they will be alive, feeling great. Then, when it gets warmer, they fully recover. The blood fills their body and puts all their muscles in motion. But one of the most amazing animals that can withstand freezing temperatures is the ghoulish icefish. It's transparent and somewhat like a jellyfish. It swims in the dark, cold Antarctic waters. The ghoulish icefish feels comfortable there because of the antifreeze in its body. More precisely, it's a unique substance that is like antifreeze in its functions. This liquid doesn't allow the animal's cells, organs, and the whole body to freeze. There are no red blood cells in the fish's blood that transport oxygen throughout its body. This is the only vertebrate with such a superpower. There are organisms on our planet that use the cold to prolong their life. Scientists have found some of them in the ice of Siberia. Those are microscopic, multi-celled creatures, like small worms, that can live in a freezer for about 10 years. But the worms from Siberia were about 24,000 years old. The scientists transported them to the laboratory and thawed them. The worms came to life and began to multiply immediately after all those centuries of sleep. Their bodies can go into cryptobiosis. This is when an entire frozen organism has minimal vital functions. The analysis showed that the worms could stay in this mode for tens of thousands of years. And there are many such animals on our planet. Also, these creatures are some of the world's most resistant to radiation. They are practically invulnerable. Now back to our story. It's possible that Jean Hilliard's body went into short cryptobiosis. Perhaps there was some non-freezing liquid in the girl's blood.
More than 50 ships and 20 planes have disappeared here since the middle of the 19th century. You won't find this place using an ordinary paper map, since it's not an official region of the Atlantic Ocean. It's just a small area of water in the shape of a triangle, located not far from the southeastern coast of the U.S. In the 20th century, this place became a legend. Some believe it's home to a secret base. Others are positive it's a time portal. Ships get caught in a strong storm and move to the past or the future. There's also a theory that the city of Atlantis is located right under the Bermuda Triangle. Its technologies create bursts of energy and destroy ships. Even airplanes have a chance to disappear in this area. All this has gone so far that if something strange happens in the ocean, everyone thinks it's somehow connected with the Bermuda Triangle. The fear of the triangle has been made popular through books and movies. Directors, writers, and journalists like to use this theme. But in their works, you only see a few correct answers. You can find the truth about this place yourself if you look closely. But first, let's refute the weakest theories. Space objects, Atlantis, time travel. All these myths appeared in the middle of the 20th century. There weren't any records about mysterious phenomena before this time. People just noted that a lot of ships were sinking here. But then, one author wrote a book about Atlantis lying in the waters of the Triangle. The author didn't provide any evidence, but he described this hypothesis very convincingly. People read it and liked it. The human psyche likes to read something secret. When you learn something that no one knows about, it makes you feel special. And of course, you begin to believe in this secret. So, this was one reason why the Bermuda Triangle book has become so popular. It brought the author a lot of money, and other people also wanted to enrich themselves the same way. Some other fantastic theories about time travel and secret bases have appeared since then. After that, people started making documentaries. All those works devoted to the mystical nature of the triangle were based not on real facts, but on theories from other books. It's impossible to find the truth in this chaos. Some people like to learn secrets, even if they're fake. But you can always find the truth if you really want. Just take any myth and try to find sources proving its reality. Most likely, you'll find nothing but non-scientific books and movies. There are also more realistic things about the triangle, but they are no less interesting. One hypothesis says that ships disappeared there because of methane. Deposits of this gas are under the seabed of this region. Sometimes it releases from there and rises to the surface. As soon as methane comes into contact with water, it takes the form of giant bubbles. Then these bubbles foam the water and create large waves that flip the ships. This theory is quite real, and such a natural phenomenon exists, but not in the Bermuda Triangle. None of the numerous studies have confirmed the presence of an increased concentration of this gas here. The last methane eruption occurred here about 15,000 years ago. Another realistic theory is rogue waves. They form without storms and winds. The calm water surface can transform into a big wave, the height of a 5-story building, in 3 seconds. It sinks a ship and then quickly disappears. The sea is calm again, as if there were no waves at all. Some scientists believe a surface sea current colliding with a strong headwind creates this phenomenon. But some recorded cases involved no wind. Another version says the wave is born thanks to the collision of warm and cold currents. But the most exciting theory talks about kinetic vampirism that forms the waves. Under certain natural conditions, waves get the ability to exchange kinetic energy. And among all the waves, there will be the biggest, the vampire one. It absorbs the energy from all the others. When the power is accumulated, the vampire wave splashes it out. This explains the force of the impact and its sudden disappearance. All theories seem logical, but scientists still can't figure out the nature of this phenomenon. Yes, rogue waves can carry ships underwater, but not only in the Bermuda Triangle. They rarely appear in all the waters of the world's oceans. So let's move on to the next theory. Some of those who sailed through this place reported their navigation devices had become unstable. The compass and electronics broke down. The signal and radio communications were lost. We need to look at the triangle from space to find out the reason. If you use special sensors and devices, you'll see that the Earth's magnetic field is weakened above the Bermuda Triangle. This field is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. The ISS astronauts said that the triangle gets more of the sun's particles than any other part of the planet. Therefore, electronics are unstable in this area. But such failures don't occur with satellites and other space objects flying within our planet's atmosphere. Areas with a weakened magnetic field appear all over the world, and they hardly ever disrupt navigation. This means that ships and planes work stably in such conditions. But all the same, a compass doesn't work correctly in the triangle area. Could it be that some magnetic anomaly affects the navigation systems? This theory was quickly refuted. Scientists regularly check the magnetic map of this region and don't find any deviations from the norm. The reason for the unstable functioning of a compass is not an anomaly. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on the planet where the true north and magnetic poles coincide. True north is the geographical North Pole. The magnetic pole is constantly moving around the globe directly to the north. Sometimes these poles collide and cause such a phenomenon as agonic lines. If you fall under this line, your compass will behave strangely and won't point you to the true north. That's why so many ships disappeared in this place at the beginning of the 20th century. People used an ordinary compass. They didn't have modern navigation technologies, and the misfunctioning of the compass could have led to disastrous consequences. Imagine that you're a ship's captain in, let's say, 1901. Your compass is guiding your way. You know you always need to sail north to get to land. Then you get into the Bermuda Triangle. You look at the compass and notice the arrow position has slightly changed. Now you need to move in another direction. This direction is the wrong one, but you don't know about it yet. You take the wrong path and end up in the Caribbean region. This area is full of tiny islands, and the seabed is not deep here. Your ship gets on a shoal. You're stuck and have no idea where you are. That's how some ships disappeared in this region. But if you had GPS, you wouldn't have lost your route and would have sailed safely to land. By the way, now, in the 21st century, you can use a compass here without problems, since the magnetic North Pole doesn't meet the true one on the territory of the Bermuda Triangle anymore. The agonic lines are somewhere else right now. But still, for some reason, ships get lost here. And now we come to the most unexpected solution to the Bermuda Triangle problem. Yes, boats sometimes disappear in this region. And the reason for this is water, ocean, nature, call it whatever you want. Unfortunately, ships sink all over the world. Don't be afraid of just one triangle. There are places in the Atlantic Ocean territory where more boats disappear.
All right, so let's start our journey with one of the most famous and scary vanished villages. It's located in India, the district of Rajasthan. This is Kuldara village. Unlike other abandoned places, this one is difficult to get to because the locals won't want to take you there. People are afraid of this place and try to avoid it. You can't get a taxi and drop off near this spot. The driver will tell you where to go. You won't find any traces of civilization nearby. The village is located in a hot desert area, but when you get close to it, you'll feel an unpleasant chill down your back. You won't find any vegetation because of the heat. There are only ruins of buildings and sand-covered roads. It seems as if you're walking through the excavations of an ancient city. But Kuldara is not so old. It only vanished in 1825. Before this time, the village had been thriving. It was almost a town consisting of many small settlements united into communities. Residents were busy with agriculture there. Plus, they went mining and extracted valuable gypsum rocks and minerals. But suddenly, everything changed overnight. For some unknown reason, people abandoned their homes and ran away. No one knows why, and no one has ever seen the residents again. Locals living in the nearest areas are sure that this place is cursed, so they never come close to it. They think this is the center of power from the other world. Some people feel sick here, others claim to see phantoms, and still others experience irrational fear. But tourists like to go there. The simplest and least scary vision says that people left the village because of the lack of water. Still, this version seems weird. If there had been a lack of water, people would have planned the change of location instead of running away in a hurry. The second version is way more mystical. There's a legend that one cruel ruler collected large taxes from this community. He fell in love with the daughter of the Kuldara chief and threatened that he would collect higher taxes if the girl refused to marry him. He gave her 1 day to make a decision. None of the residents agreed with such a requirement. As a sign of solidarity, they decided to leave the village. Those who don't believe in all these rumors can spend a night in a tent there. Chances are you'll hear someone screaming or feel someone walking and knocking on your tent. Nah, just kidding. Our next village is in the U.S., in the state of Pennsylvania. More precisely, it's not even a village, but a borough called Centralia. This place looks totally lifeless. Burnt trees, dried grass, empty buildings. Almost all the roads here have huge cracks. People sprinkle them with gravel to decrease the amount of thick smoke that's pouring from the ground all the time. This abandoned place has been burning for more than 50 years. No wonder this place reminds of something. The authors of the horror game Silent Hill got inspiration from this town. Centralia was a mining town with shops, cafes, libraries, and happy residents. People worked in the mines to get anthracite coal. They used one of the underground tunnels as a landfill for garbage. And then, in 1962, according to the popular version, they decided to get rid of garbage by burning it. The plan failed. As soon as the garbage caught fire, it spread throughout the mine. Then, all mining work in the town stopped because of the increased level of carbon dioxide. Residents didn't manage to extinguish the fire, and it started to spread underground throughout the whole city. Roads began to heat up. The soil became poisonous. Thick smoke slowly filled the streets. People were evacuated from this place. By 1992, Centralia was completely abandoned. The town looks ominous, and some people believe it's not just because of the fire. They believe not all people managed to evacuate, and their phantoms are still walking through the burning streets, waiting for someone to finally put an end to this eternal fire. Just imagine a prosperous, beautiful village where people do agriculture on fertile land and bake delicious bread. And then, bang! Everything disappears. There were only traces on the ground and a couple of bricks left from beautiful stone houses, mills, and chapels. Huge fertile fields became abandoned, and no one knows why. Well, welcome to the English village of Gainsthorpe in Lincolnshire, or rather what's left of it. From above, you'll see earthen ramparts on the grassy field, the outlines of roads, sunken hollows, and barely distinguishable contours of the walls of houses and barns. If you come here, you may not even notice the traces of the village. It's just an unusual green field. But in the 17th century, life was thriving here. Let's try to solve this mystery. The first mention of this place dates back to 1086. I wasn't around then. Since that time, it was prospering. There were about 19 fertile fields, a chapel, a mill, a bridge, and a manor house where the lords lived. In total, there were about 25 buildings. From the records dating to the 16th century, you can find that quarries appeared in the village. That is, this place not only got wealthy, but also kept pace with progress. Then, by 1616, the village had become completely abandoned. Scientists are still looking for an answer to this question. Some believe that something terrible and mystical happened to the village. One of the main hypotheses explaining what happened is the plague. Another version is that Gainsthorpe still couldn't catch up with progress. In the 17th century, there was a transition from rural to urban life. Industrialization had begun. Many young people left their native villages to search for a better life. Some believe that groups of robbers and thieves settled in the village. They turned Gainsthorpe into their base and eventually plundered it all. The exact reason is still unknown, but the good news is that, theoretically, the village can be returned. Specialists can reconstruct the ruins and recreate agriculture. The hardest part, though, is to find funding. A similar fate befell the small village of Achill Island in Ireland. About 40 simple houses made of clay and straw were located along the valley washed by Keem Bay. And it was just a fantastic place to live. Coast, mountains, crystal clear water, and rich soil. The village was founded in 1838. Now, there are several mounds of ground and small pieces of walls left of it. Locals living in neighboring settlements don't remember this village. Or maybe they know something, but don't want to say anything to anybody. Only travel writers described it in their diaries as a place of serene beauty. Now, many towns nearby still exist, but why did this one disappear? An inexplicable phenomenon that sweeps entire villages off the face of the earth? An unknown, mystical, scary force? If there is nothing fantastic about this village's disappearance, then why don't people build any new houses here? Perhaps they're afraid of something. So, the local archaeological school students decided to find the answer to this question. They started excavating the village in search of clues. They found out that some kind of trouble happened to this place in the middle of the 19th century, but it's not known exactly what. At that time, a terrible period of famine came. Perhaps people simply left their homeland to find food elsewhere. Anyway, work on excavation continues, and the students intend to uncover the truth.
Humanity has been looking to the stars, searching for secrets that outer space is hiding. But deep underground, within the soil of our own planet, there are literal troves of fantastic things just waiting to be discovered. How can you talk about excavations and not mention Egypt? In 2019, archaeologists uncovered a tomb of a high official in South Saqqara who lived about 4,400 years ago. His name was Kui, and the hieroglyphs on the walls of the tomb recited his many titles, one of which was the sole friend of the pharaoh of the time. The discovery could have been pretty usual for Egypt, if not for the tomb's interior. The walls, the ceiling, and even parts of the floor were covered in hieroglyphs, pictures, and intricate patterns. But what surprised the scientists the most was how well preserved the colors of those images were. Despite the cracks and chips on the walls and the ceiling, they were still bright and vivid, almost as if they had been painted recently. In Israel, a whole city was discovered by archaeologists in 2019. It dated back 5,000 years to the early Bronze Age and was home to about 6,000 people. Millions of tools, fragments of pottery items, and stone vessels were found at the site. Scientists say the city was so huge, it could be called the New York of the period. The megalopolis was carefully planned, with dozens of streets, alleyways, and public and residential areas. Archaeologists state that the citizens used to live and trade not only with different regions, but also with various cultures and kingdoms. Bar Hill is an Iron Age settlement in eastern England, and archaeologists suddenly stumbled upon a very unusual thing there. As they were scouting the area, they looked inside one particular ditch and found thousands of frog bones. Later calculations showed more than 8,000 bones belonged to frogs and toads. There were no signs of damage. The bones lay in heaps and piles. Scientists have no idea what could have drawn so many frogs and toads to a single place. It's known that local people of the time ate frogs, so the settlement's inhabitants could have brought them there. Other versions state that the frogs could have come for the large amounts of insects feeding on the crops, or they may have been looking for a body of water and got trapped in the ditch. As for now, the frog mystery remains unsolved. Not so much mysterious as amusing. A nearly 1,800-year-old insult was found carved in stone, not far from Hadrian's Wall in England. An ancient Roman fort just south of the wall had a lot of writing tablets, but this particular one was especially curious because of its contents. The stone mentioned some Secundinus and said a pretty nasty thing about him. In fact, this is the first stone graffiti ever found that indicates Romans did have quarrels amongst themselves. A rancher in Wyoming, not far from the town of Newcastle, was going about his ranching business when he suddenly stumbled upon a weird bone sticking out from the soil. As he carefully dug it out, he realized the bone belonged to a huge creature. It was larger than a bear. But even so, there were no bears in the area. The rancher called scientists to figure out what it was all about. When they excavated the parts, they ended up with 3 skeletons of dinosaurs, Triceratops to be precise. Researchers were astounded by the discovery for 2 reasons. First, the skeletons were surprisingly complete. There were limb bones, skull parts, feet, and parts of tails. Second, Triceratops had been considered loners because all the previously found skeletons were found alone. In this case, there were 3 of them. One seemed to be a youth, while the 2 others were probably its parents. Judging by the tooth marks on the bones of the largest of the 3, a T-Rex attacked the family, and they couldn't escape from the huge predator. The catacombs of Paris are yet to be fully charted, and strange things keep coming up down there. One of them was found in August of 2004. The local police were having a routine training exercise in the caverns not far from the Eiffel Tower when they unexpectedly came upon a large cave transformed into a fully equipped movie theater. The chamber had an arena where the viewers would sit, a full-sized screen, a projector, and many movies to watch. Interestingly, they were all regular ones, featuring 50s noir films and more recent pictures. There was also a second, smaller cavern adjacent to the first one, which was used as a restaurant. Someone installed an electricity system and at least 3 phone lines in the underground cinema. But the most sinister thing happened when the officers returned to the site 3 days later to further investigate the matter. They found that all the power cables and phone lines had been cut, and a mysterious handwritten note was lying in the middle of the floor, saying, "Do not try to find us." Nobody still knows who built that underground movie theater and why. In 1948, the first report came about a puzzling 93-mile-long wall built in Jordan. It's still unknown who made it, when, and why. Its purpose is not defensive. It was too low and narrow to have protected anything from anyone. It lies in ruins today, of course, but when it was still quite new, most of it was about 3 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide. The most popular theory explains that the strange wall might have served as a farmland boundary. Researchers found traces of ancient agricultural lands to the west of the wall. The boundary might have protected those from hungry goats emerging from the east with nomadic tribes. While we're still in Jordan, there's one more mystery here. Stone circles that date back 2,000 years. They're pretty big, with a diameter of about 1,300 feet or more. So far, scientists have discovered 11 of these big circles. Yes, that's their official name. Still, they're just a couple of feet high, making them even more puzzling. Originally, researchers believed they were huge corrals for animals, but there are no openings between the stones the circles are made from to let people or cattle in or out. Currently, no one knows who built these ancient structures or why. Archaeologists in Glasgow excavated a 5,000-year-old stone slab in 2016 and then buried it again. The slab is called the Cockno stone and has been known to the locals since the 19th century. The stone is large and flat, measuring 43 by 26 feet, and has swirling decorations that had been found at many other prehistoric sites across the globe. The stone was first fully excavated in 1887, but within the following decades, it was covered in graffiti by unknown people. You've just reached your perfect spot on a deserted beach. It's so quiet here that you start to doze off. But as you open your eyes, you are shocked. Wait a minute, is that an actual house that's just been washed up on the shore? It may sound like the beginning of a sci-fi novel, but not if you live near this beach in El Salvador. There's a mysteriously abandoned house there that looks as if it's just been washed ashore. How did this villa end up there? How long has it been here without anyone noticing it? This mysterious construction is 46 miles south of El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. Locals say the building used to be a hotel called Puerto Ventura. At the time it was built, its main attraction was the fact that it was really close to the sea. Unfortunately, the engineering behind it wasn't well planned out, all because locals didn't need any official permission to start the construction. The hotel was too close to the water and dangerously exposed to the elements. The Roman-style villa is now a mere 50 feet from the edge of the sea when the tide is low. It can only be accessed in the morning because later, the tides fill the first floor with salt water. What's now left of the hotel looks like the ruins of a 2-story house. The front part is very impressive, with Roman-type pillars. It also has wide windows on the second floor. you can still see parts of the iron structures and remains of what used to be the gateway to the second floor. There are some bleachers at the top of the building. They're sometimes used by tourists. More and more people are now browsing the area, taking photos, even though the building is obviously not safe for climbing. There's little information on how long it's been sitting in its current location, but some locals say it's been there for at least 20 years. It had remained a local secret for years before it was discovered by a TikTok user in 2021. But that doesn't answer the question. How did the hotel end up in another location altogether? This is where things become a little fuzzy. While some locals say that the building was abandoned decades ago, others claim it was deserted after Hurricane Mitch hit the area back in 1998. Hurricane Mitch was one of the most dangerous weather phenomena to ever hit Central America. During the storm, the winds traveled at 178 miles per hour, and the hurricane itself lasted for about 15 hours. It was also the cause of a huge amount of rainfall, which resulted in floods and many dangerous landslides. Being built so close to the shoreline, the former hotel had little chance of surviving the extreme weather conditions, so it must have been literally displaced. After sitting under the sun, you might start dreaming of some snowballs getting washed ashore. To even out the temperature. I'm not kidding. This strange natural phenomenon did happen back in 2016. It resulted in about 11 miles of the coast of the Gulf of Aab in West Siberia getting covered with huge snowballs. Because of the low temperatures, small pieces of ice started to form in the water. Afterward, the wind and waves rolled them into giant snowballs. Some of them were the size of a tennis ball, but others were up to 3 feet wide. A 2004 Harley-Davidson night train motorcycle popped up ashore on a British Columbia beach back in 2012. It was neatly packed inside a shipping container. It took some time to do it, but the owner was eventually traced down. His name was Ikuyo Yokoyama, and he lost his motorcycle after a tsunami struck Japan on March 11, 2011. To get to its final destination, the Harley-Davidson traveled more than 4,000 miles. To celebrate its long journey, Yokoyama donated the bike to the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. It's been on display there ever since, in case you want to visit. This strange phenomenon made it look as if someone spilled dish soap all over the beach. But it does happen pretty often in Queensland. Sea foam covers the shore there a couple of times each year. It mostly happens after a storm, when ocean waves move dissolved organic matter around. It's basically like a giant ice cream maker. After Cyclone Debbie back in March of 2017, some beaches actually needed to be closed because of huge amounts of white foam. The wind even brought some of that foam to the nearby towns, making locals believe it was snowing. Would you be surprised to see a 6x6 foot rusty metal die washed ashore on your local beach? Because back in 2017, people in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho sure were. It turned out to be an old storage tank. Someone decided to spice it up a bit by adding some white spots to make it look like a die. In 1992, thousands of rubber duckies got stranded at sea after a large container ship that was transporting them was hit by a wave. As you can imagine, the ducks started popping up all over the world, in Hawaii, Alaska, South America, Australia, in Europe, and even in the Arctic. It's estimated that a couple hundred of those unlucky rubber ducks are still out there. Interestingly, they turned out to be very useful to scientists. Based on their movements, researchers can monitor the direction of water currents. If you happen to like dinosaurs, you'll be happy to know sea waters can also bring ashore some fossils. In 2018, a large dinosaur jawbone ended up on the coast of Lilstock Beach in Somerset, England. It used to belong to a dinosaur called Ichthyosaurus. Thanks to this finding, scientists were able to make an impressive discovery. Before, they thought the Ichthyosaurus could reach a maximum length of about 69 feet. But after they studied the jawbone, they ended up recalculating the creature's size. They concluded that the Ichthyosaurus could grow up to 85 feet. The megalodon was the largest predator in our planet's history. It lived almost all over the globe, except near the poles. How do we know that? Because megalodon teeth keep appearing on beaches every now and then. One staggering megalodon tooth, which was way over 20 inches long, was discovered in a river in Croatia. Since these creatures have been extinct for about 3 million years, their teeth are highly prized by fossil hunters. A giant Lego man that washed ashore is something I never thought I'd hear about. And it turns out it didn't happen just once. There were 4 of these giant Lego men in total, each around 8 feet tall. One was found in England and one in the Netherlands, while the other 2 popped up in Florida and California. It was surely not a coincidence, and after some research, people found out that a Dutch artist was behind this. Ego Leonard started this project as a personal statement campaign. A short film was even made about this, and it was called No Real Than You Are. It was a pitch-dark night, and we were out for a walk. Suddenly, a bright white light came from the train tracks. It was getting closer and closer before it reached the woods and suddenly faded away in the distance. This story, told by hundreds of witnesses, sounds quite normal until you find out those train tracks have long been abandoned and torn out. The last train that could have been the source of light had departed many years ago. The mysterious ghost train became the main site of St. Louis, a little village in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan. There are just around 400 people living there, and hundreds visit it to see the St. Louis light. It was featured in books and online, and was on TV shows like Unsolved Mysteries. For decades, no one could explain what it really was. Some people spotted a white light. Others said they'd seen a red one. An urban legend explained the red light was a lantern carried by a ghost of a train conductor who had lost his life one night examining the tracks. Scientists tried to debunk both ghost-involving theories, but failed. Then, 2 high school students from northern Saskatchewan decided to jump in. They first witnessed the ghost train on a road trip to St. Louis. One of the girls said it must have been car headlights, but she needed evidence to prove that. Together with her friend, she decided to find an answer and make it their science fair project. They made several field trips to St. Louis for research. The young Ghostbusters used a detailed map, a compass, and a GPS system, which was pretty rare back in 2001. The girls found the location from where the ghost light was seen best of all. Then, they drew a straight line on the map to where the light was coming from and marked all roads next to or on the line. One of the girls' father agreed to help them. He parked his car at various locations near the lines and flashed his headlights. The girls didn't see them, as all the places seemed to be too low. Finally, they found a short hilltop highway stretch. For 20 minutes, the dad was flashing his lights on and off, and every time the lights went on, the girls could spot the ghost train. When he turned the car around, they saw the mysterious red light as well. The spot was rather far away from the track, so it was possible to see it, thanks to diffraction. The light passed through a little opening, maybe the trees, and became larger. The smart girls received gold medals at the science fair for their project. 10 years later, a similar story happened in Anson, Texas. Each night, the locals noticed a mysterious light at one spot of the highway. They called it Anson Light and believed it was a mother with a lantern searching for her son. He'd disappeared in a snowstorm a long time ago. His mom went looking for him and never came back either. A group of students didn't believe in this beautiful story and decided to find the source of light with their iPhones. They followed Google Maps down the dirt road to a highway that they thought to be the light source. Halfway to the light, it was already clear it was really coming from cars, and not a mother with a lantern. It's easy to be a ghostbuster outside with your friends, but what if you had a ghost in your own home? This is what happened to a family who moved into an old house in 1921. The house was huge, with gas lights, no electricity, and many passageways. Just a classic movie haunted house. One morning, the lady who went down in records as Mrs. H heard footsteps over her head when she was home alone. She rushed upstairs and found an empty room. She checked every room and also looked one floor up. It was all empty. Then, she started hearing strange noises when she was in bed at night. It sounded like someone was moving furniture and china and sighed in the silence. Whatever was haunting the family was getting braver and braver. It followed them along the halls. It felt like it was about to approach them and come into contact. One of the children of Mrs. H once ran into her room and asked why she was calling him. She said it must have been the wind, but the child was positive it was someone's voice. The plants didn't live long in that house. Finally, the scariest thing happened. Mrs. H woke up one night and clearly saw a man and a woman in her room. She had to stop it all somehow, so she asked her brother-in-law for help. He did his research and suggested it could be a carbon monoxide leak. This colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas had caused similar visions in other people. When they checked the gas, they found the gas was coming out of the furnace and into the room instead of going out through the chimney. It gave the family headaches, hallucinations, dizziness, and other unpleasant symptoms. Some ghosts leave fingerprints behind, or so says the San Antonio legend. According to it, in 1938, a school bus was driving through a rough snowstorm and got stuck on the train tracks. When the train crew saw the bus, they did their best to stop, but it was impossible to avoid the collision. No one in the bus had survived in that accident, and ever since, the ghosts of those people are protecting others from the same fate. Hundreds of people have visited the spot ever since to play with destiny. They leave the car in neutral on so-called ghost tracks and wait for the ghosts to come and help them out. Some people put baby powder on their cars to have fingerprints as evidence. And they do see the fingerprints once they get out of the car. Turns out there's a logical explanation for this one as well. There's an incline on the tracks, so when the car moves a bit, you can see your own fingerprints in baby powder. And the original story that inspired the legend didn't even happen in San Antonio, but in Salt Lake City, Utah. Something unexplainable was happening on the campus of Coventry University in England. Whoever visited the 14th century cellar ran out of it in fear. They said they'd seen a ghost of a woman. One lecturer at the school, who was also a part-time ghostbuster, decided to debunk the mystery. He was once working at his lab when he felt the presence of someone else. He was brave enough to do research in the cellar and found out the reason for all this madness was what he called the fear frequency. The levels of sound frequency in the cellar were so high that they made people see optical illusions, feel anxiety, and get chills down the spine. A similar effect makes you hear humming of a glass when you're running a damp finger on it. A small village of Kalachi in Kazakhstan has become home to a unique, mysterious sickness nicknamed the Sleep Hollow. Back in 2013, the first villagers got affected by it. They were doing their regular routine, biking, going to work, or chatting with friends, when suddenly they'd fall asleep. It all looked similar: slurred speech, lightheadedness, and then boom! Some of them only woke up after 6 days of loud snoring. And when they did, they didn't remember anything that happened to them and experienced weakness and headaches. The Sleeping Beauty style sickness affected people of all ages, including kids, and even a cat named Marquise. Its owner said the cat started attacking walls, furniture, and the family dog. Then it dozed off and was snoring like a human for hours. More than 150 people got the Sleep Hollow in 3 years. Doctors and sleep disorder experts struggled to find a solution.
The coldest part of our planet, Antarctica, keeps surprising us. Take a look at this waterfall named Blood Falls. Reddish water falls from the white ice. Scientists concluded that the color is related to iron. The water coming from the glacier oxidizes and rusts when it's exposed to oxygen, and the red color occurs. Step on Mount Gandic. It lays eggs. Well, maybe not real eggs, but the stones certainly look like dinosaur eggs. That's why the mountain got its fame. Let's call them stone eggs, formed in one part of the mountain over 500 million years ago. Interestingly, this phenomenon repeats once every 30 years. Eggs come out in various sizes and shades. The stones appear on the surface of the cliff. A study made in the area has revealed that the composition of the stones of the cliff isn't similar to other parts of the mountain. Here, calcareous rocks rule. They're more prone to erosion. They ripen off day by day. It took 3 decades for the stones to get to the egg shape. Yet, it's still a mystery how these rock formations can be so perfectly spherical and smooth. According to scientists, every stone egg has an organic core. They're made of shells, plant remains, fish teeth, and skeletons. Maybe this has something to do with it. Gulu village is close to the stone eggs. Locals believe that these eggs are sacred. Villagers associate it with good fortune. In fact, nearly every family has one of these eggs in their house. Unfortunately, there are only about 70 eggs left, so if you want to see them, you gotta hurry up. The Richat structure is a circular geological phenomenon in the Sahara Desert near Mauritania. It's made out of rocks in layers, and these layers look very much like rings. No wonder the unique structure even got NASA's attention. Up from the sky, the geological feature seems to be swirling and spinning. Scientists are still not sure how these rings got there. Some say it was an asteroid impact. Many others believe that it was a natural geological process. To them, the Richat structure is an uplifted and eroded dome. Geologists often classify it as a domed anticline. The scientists discovered that the rocks at the center are older than the ring-shaped outer rocks, so it seems like the stones have been eroded to flat rock layers.